I've just spent a lazy day today starting to smoke over how I'm going to do the electronics in the Skyhunter. I'm pretty sure I'm going to do the airspeed sensor right straight out the front. I am not going to mount the GPS/compass there. I think you could, though, down inside the fuselage. I'm not sure. You couldn't in the old days when the best GPS only hooked up. Maybe if you were really lucky and you saw something in the double digits, 10, that was great. 12, never saw 12 in the old days. Nowadays we see like 20 something. So this actually will be higher on the fuselage. But as you'll see here in a second, I'm not sure that I'm not going to wire this directly into the flight controller instead of having any pins or such. I think I'm going to have to wire pins onto this. These four will be the video transmitter side, and I'm going to use, for kicks and grins, these connectors. These connectors are basically LED type connectors, things we would use when we create LED projects. And you have to understand, a lot of my stuff goes back to the Navy days when I was working on multi-million-dollar airplanes. The E-2's electronics package, one of the most expensive airplanes of its time. And basically these snap together and they lock together. Let's see if I can get this to focus. There we go. There's the 4-conductor one. Here's the female end for it. I'm not extremely sure that these contacts won't chatter in vibration. I have no idea. They're certainly not gold covered. But they slip together and then they lock. And then they lock. They're supposed to lock. Well, looks like you can pull them apart even when they're locked. It looks like you might be able to just pull the tab off the end of the plastic that locks it in. But we'll look at that deeper. This is the 6-conductor version of that same thing. Supposed to lock. Yeah, I think I just pulled it so hard it pulled that plastic tab off the other one. I did pull it kind of hard. I pulled it with a good amount of strength. So this is just the 6-conductor version of that same connector for the receiver side. Voltage, ground, CRSF, and Mavlink, hopefully. And this wire is too large of a diameter to be soldered into those holes. Those holes are just too small to get this wire in after you strip it. So I'm going to have to put some regular pins in that for that. Put some pins on this end of this, and then this will be soldered to the end of those shielded cables you saw me put in the wings. And then when you put the wings on, you'll snap these together. Oh, look, that one snapped together. Wow. And I did have to pull on it very hard, but wow, this one didn't break. Well, it didn't break. It just came apart. It took a lot of force, much more than it does for a regular connector or whatever. These tabs right here can be broken off for weight, but they're popped into square holes to hold this whole thing. So I thought that would be better than, yep, I can pull them apart, but I have to give it a lot of force, much more than vibration and or anything's going to happen inside the aircraft. Yeah, they'll stay together under quite a bit of force, but as we've seen, not totally. So I also, as you'll see in just a second, by the direction arrow, whoops, the direction arrow right here on this flight controller, it's a 765 wing. I'm going to be mounting it backwards in the airplane, which is easy to do, easy to correct in software. Any software corrects that simple function easily. But like I say, I'm just kind of, oh, and then I have to make up a different. I'm going to take 6 wires into this M95883 GPS compass, but I have to also utilize 4 wires out of this side of it for a I2C bus and make up a cable. Well, actually what I'm going to do is this cable that's the same connector on each end, I'm going to cut, and then I'm going to actually be putting this end back in the other side, not like I'm doing right now. It's an endless loop. You'd be drawn into the void. Yeah. First you have to be able to see, which is a challenge for me straight up. There we go. It won't be linked around like that. It'll be cut where it needs to be, and then 4 wires out of this conductor that's for the airspeed sensor will be wired into 4 wires of that front port on that GPS module. Ding, ding, like that. Something like that. I think you understand. I'll show it in the next few days. And then this back wire being cut and having pins wired on it or soldered straight to the board like I was wondering here. They'll go back to the flight controller. So the airspeed sensor will be sent through the I2C bus of the M9N5883 GPS, which is multiple constellations and should pick up a whole lot more sats than any others that I have. That's why I got these, to play with multi-constellation GPS module. What else? Nothing more here. All of that takes a lot of mental work and very little physical work. I did mount the flight controller with some double-sided tape, but that wasn't much more physical work on this so far. Now on the fuselage itself, I held the wings up to this big slot right here for a few seconds and kind of marked right here on the side the trailing edge of the spar in the wing, which is basically the CG, center of gravity. So once I had that little dot on there, I played with the this little beauty, the 1S battery. Really bank and yank on this. Radian FPV, it does have a video camera and a transmitter on it of sorts. If any of you have played with this video transmitter, likes on this or likes on the Nano Skyhunter, which came with the Nano Skyhunter, and this one came with this, they are not much pumpkin, as we say around here. But they do the job. But this thing is so much fun to fly. I think I saw old Mr. Kent of MrKent.com recently flying his. I mean, the wing isn't even fixed in the fuselage. It slides about readily, forward and backwards to adjust the CG. It's just slipped through the wing. The poor little hair-sized connections are just amazing. It's just a bunch of fun to fly. This is so much fun to fly, even in just a little wind. No, not a lot of wind, just a little wind, because it's a glider. You take it up, shut off the motor, and the props fold back, and it's purely a glider. I've had so much fun with this one. You can almost fly it in a school gym. I mean, it doesn't need a lot of space. It's just good for a lot of things. It's good for getting some hours on RC airplanes, installing it a couple of times, and recovering. I pretty much know how to do stall recovery for a real airplane, but I'm not sure it applies to a RC airplane. I think you got to drop the nose, even if you're going straight down and add power. We're going to find out. Because stall testing, well, stalls are one of my favorite things in life. I got grounded by the Navy for 2 weeks in Millington, Tennessee, almost 50 years ago, when I was taking flight instructions and I was out solo and I got caught by another instructor. You know, they were always the E6s and above. Not always, but in general, it was the E6s, the chiefs who were the flight instructors. Flight instructor cost me $5 an hour back then. This was 1972. And an airplane was $7.50 an hour. The flying club had an agreement with the Navy Credit Union on the south side of the base that if you qualified, which basically you were just in, they had you for another 3 years and 9 months or so. This is my first duty station out of boot camp. They knew they were going to get their $1,200 out of you, but you could go to the credit union and sign up for the private pilots package and give the flying club on the north side of the base your their check, whatever, and you were pretty much guaranteed to get your private pilot's license for $1,200. That included the rental of the airplane and the instructor, and a little cash left over to buy your flight computer that we used back in those days, which was a round thing. I don't even know if I have mine around here. For $1,200. So, accelerated stalls was part of the departure stall training, where you're full power. It's hard to increase your throttle to interrupt a stall if it's already at the highest it can be, which is frequently on takeoff. And you've got the nose up too high is why you are going to stall. You don't have the airspeed for that attack angle, and you're going to stall the airplane. You can only drop the nose. That's all you can do with a departure stall, because, like I say, you're already at full throttle. Well, we practice that departure stalls at 6,000, 5,000, 6,000 feet. And one of the things they show you to show you how much trouble you're in is if you're not coordinated when the stall breaks. And what they mean by coordinated is a coordinated turn in an airplane. You can bank the wings 90 degrees to the ground, and if you're properly coordinated, you can also keep an open cup of coffee in your lap, and the coffee will not come out of the cup. What the body and the coffee, everything, the plane thinks is the force is straight down through the bottom of the aircraft, gravitational force. It's truly not. It's centrifugal force at that moment. But if you are perfectly coordinated, and there's a turn and bank indicator on the console to tell you if you're coordinated or not. If it's inside the two white lines, you're coordinated. Whether you're in a 5-degree bank, a 50-degree bank, or a 90-degree bank, you can keep an unopened cup of liquid in your hand. Nothing's going to happen bad with it. So So if you're uncoordinated, you see those forces are off of straight down through the bottom of the center of gravity of the airplane. And on a departure stall, if you're uncoordinated in a Cessna 150, you can't do anything about it. The airplane is going to immediately roll on its back. It's going to roll 180 degrees on its back as the stall breaks. Nothing on heaven and earth can stop that. And in a Cessna 150, because technically you're not supposed to do accelerated stalls in a Cessna 150. I don't think it's a case where they're not recommended. I think they just say straight up you're not supposed to do it. But a lot of the instructors will do accelerated stalls with you during departure stall training. So you pull the nose up, full throttle. You keep holding it up and up and up and up until it breaks. And if you're coordinated, it'll just drop the nose itself and start flying again. You really don't have to do nothing if you're coordinated. But if you're uncoordinated, which means the rudder usually is just a little bit off, one wing will break before the other, and it flips upside down. Nothing you can do about it. So if you want to induce an accelerated stall in a Cessna 150 when you're out solo or whatever, or when my instructor taught me how to do it, just as the stall gets ready to break, you just tap the one rudder one direction or the other just a little bit. You don't have to move it much, believe me. And you're going to have a little fun ride, because you're going to flip over 180. And now in a Cessna 150, if you don't get the throttle pulled all the way off and the carburetor heat pulled all the way on so that the engine is at its lowest RPMs possible, before you come under on your back, you're on your back like this, before you can come under like this and recover the airplane, you'll rip the wings off of it. If you are good enough at flying and you immediately pull the throttle and pull the carburetor heat, you can do it right and left. It's a lot of fun. It's just really, for me, it was really fun until I got back to the flying club one afternoon and they said, they want to talk to you. And when I walked into the office, they said, well, one of the instructors says you was out doing accelerated stalls solo. I said, yes, sir. I was taught to do them when I was having general instruction. I thought you were supposed to practice everything in your general instructions. He says, you know, the Cessna 150 is not rated for accelerated stalls. I said, my instructor had me do them. He said, you know, the Cessna 150 is not rated for accelerated stalls. I said, well, I've heard that. He said, the Cessna 150 is not rated for accelerated stalls. 2 weeks, no flying. And they grounded me for 2 weeks. Anyway, that's a little bit what I was doing today, and a little bit of a story, probably more than you guys might want. But I have lots of stories. I have almost 68 years of stories soon. Have a good one. Thank you so much. Equipment tray for the Skyhunter, and kind of decided that because of the length, look at, right, let me show this before I put that back in there. Look at this. Look at the length of the two big silicone wires and connectors I put on. These came like this. I didn't shorten them. I just hooked them up on the flight controller when I was making my first 765 wing, and wow, these leads are let's see here, there. Right at 6 3/4 inches long. They're quite long. I really would have liked to have them shorter. But I thought if I took the one, which is this one, I think, that goes in the ESC. Yep, sure is. And I put it through the hole. And it went towards the back of the plane. Where it was underneath, it could hook here into the ESC. I like pictures. It could hook into the ESC there, and then wherever the ESC mounted in the fuselage, this wire could kind of come towards the front and then go back. Look at all that wire. You know, if I was younger and back in my good soldering days, I would probably cut this in a heartbeat. Might even make it connector free. I might end up doing that anyway. And just making it much better. All this length and weight, it's just against my general feelings, because this flight controller, I mean, ESC doesn't get to go back further much than this, you'll see in a second. Matter of fact, I'm going to leave that in there. No, I'll just go ahead and disconnect it. And then the other lead, which is for the battery, that would come out the front, although it's really not long enough to come completely out the front, but it might not be easy to hook up, but I think that's where the main battery will hook up. Let's see if I can get this inside the plane real quick. The trick here is keeping this connector up from catching on anything right now. Cheated. I just wrapped them up to the bottom of the board real quick, which I considered doing in the build, but I didn't think the front one came out far enough in the front to be plugging in and out of battery easily, and I felt like the back one needed the excess room and be able to kind of curl forward a little bit and then come back because of the excess length on that ESC. That ESC is an old one from a long gone, what was that one? Well, that was a really big, it was the Cloud Surfer. It was a Horizon Hobbies Super Surfer or something. Had like a 8-foot wingspan. My butt was green then. I don't know if I both had the prop on backwards and the center of gravity not correct. Remember the first time I went to a flying field with some friends about 6 years ago. After my first flight, Rob looked down and says, "You know that prop's on backwards, don't you?" And I said, "No, first time I ever flew an RC airplane." So there's the sliding equipment tray, and what I kind of did was, looking across this line, what would be the center of gravity, I just kind of slid the tray in and centered up that logo on the Maytech controller, the white square you see there, with this line. Because if I put the tray in the other way, it bottoms out in the back here without the flight controller getting this far back in the fuselage. Which I can illustrate easily by just simply turning it around. Might not be as simple as I say, will it? So, and in this configuration, there's where the back of the equipment tray bottoms out in the sides. I don't know if you can quite see in there. It bottoms out in the sides of the fuselage, where the fuselage starts to narrow here. Can't be slid back any further. And you can see now the center of my flight controller is way up here. A full inch in front of, or more. It's probably an inch and a half. Maybe 2 inches. No, it's an inch and a half or so. Forward of the center of gravity, and I didn't want to do that. So what I've decided now is, with the, you can see the arrow on the flight controller again for forward, it's going to be in there backwards, with it mounted where it is on the equipment tray, and it can be slid back where that little dot right down there can intersect that white logo on that flight controller, and pretty much it'll be sitting in the center of gravity of the airplane. And as you can see in the back, there's still room to slide the equipment tray back. The equipment tray is not all the way back. And in truth, the equipment tray is not all the way forward. I don't want it to interfere with the battery area. I don't want it this far forward. I mean, it could, and with it sliding, you could put the battery in, hook it up, and slide this anywhere you wanted. I don't want it to slide around much. I'm not sure if I'm going to glue it in or not. If I do, I'm just going to slide it to my nowhere, right about there with 1/4 of an inch or so left of it. The logo sort of, it's a little bit back right there, sort of lines up with the center of the flight controller, and the flight controller centered right and left in the fuselage. I think I'm just going to put a little dot of hot glue right here to keep it from sliding around. So that's kind of the way I've been approaching this today. Like I say, at a more leisurely pace. I've had a good day today. I've had a good day the past 2 days. The 2 days before that were, I was pretty sick. I'm kind of fatigued from the bad days this week. My doctors are working on me hard to get me off of insulin. There's a lot of hard changes going on in my body. They're producing good changes in my diabetes because it's so much better under control now. If I'm about to get off of insulin, that's pretty evident, isn't it? Just when we have anything like that in life, it always seems like the hardest part of them is right at the end when you finally succeed. Life seems to fight hardest with its last throes, with about everything in life, right down to building these drones. So I was thinking, with the GPS module there, my wires are long enough. Oops. If I can get them in here so we can see them. I went down through one of the holes in the equipment tray. With that in about that position, you can see those wires come back. Oops, let's slide this back forward so we get it back on the CG, and therefore the wires, if I can get a hold of them. I wanted this because it would be big enough for me to be able to work in. But sometimes I'm not sure it's even still big enough. They make a bigger airplane on the market. So you can see right here, this is the end of that cable. And it doesn't have much play, about 1 inch. If it were actually wired, dropped it again. Anyway, if it were wired into the 6 wires right there on that flight controller, even plugged in, I think that's going to work. Of course, that doesn't give me a second end on this cable to have one for the front to go over to the airspeed. I'll have to figure that out. But some of these I'm going to put pins on and put connectors on and then run them up to the other ones I was wanting to use, because I don't want to be trying to plug in stuff on the pins down there on that controller. The RC receiver on 6 pins, the VTX on 3 pins, camera on 3 pins, GPS on 6 pins. Because I'll miss by 1 pin right or left and get voltage a place where it shouldn't be and blow either the flight controller up or the peripheral that's out on the end of the wire. That's why I'm going to do these connectors labeled. You can already see some of my labels right here that I'm going to put on each side of the connector, so it's easily, and you can see how big the text is, so my blind eyes can see it. So that's generally the gist of today. Lazy, laid back Sunday. Just doing some of the other things I love in life and smoking over this electronics. That kind of thing is fun for me. But it doesn't seem like much happened today. Don't even know if I'll call this a build day. I guess I have to, don't I? Let's see, what else? Getting a strong urge to fly the past 48, 72 hours. So much that I'm almost ready to set all this aside. Just grab the old Bixler 2. It's got a 2.4 gigahertz Futaba compatible receiver in it. And that is all. It doesn't have... okay, I'm going to tell the truth about the Bixler. The Bixler has an orange RX RC in it that actually has 3-axis stabilization. So it does do a little bit of stabilization. So does the Zoid Dart 250. It has a stabilization board in it. The other Bixler 2 I built up as a drone, it has a Pixhawk in it. I'm not sure that'll even fly. I'm still going to try to fly it before I fly any other drones over the one I have that's built by MRO. So my first ever drone will be something I built. This one, I don't remember if the Nano Skyhunter has a little stabilization board in it or not. Trying to look down in there. I don't know. I don't think so. I'll have to look that back up before I fly it, won't I? Well, what's that for? Whoops. Whatever that for is no longer connected. Yeah, I have to get the manual out every day, every time before I fly and review stuff or I'll be in trouble. I think that's, I don't know if it has stabilization in it. I don't think so. It's just a straight up bank and yank. And of course, one of the ones I'll show you here in a second. Let me go get it. This is the little, what, UMX FPV Radian. It has a camera and a video transmitter in it, much like the Nano Skyhunter, but I don't know if you've had any experience with these little one-piece transmitter and cameras. As we say around here, they're not much pumpkin. This only has rudder and elevator control. There's no ailerons on it whatsoever. The wing in it even is loose in it, so it can be slid forward and backwards a little bit or right and left a little bit when you get ready to fly it for center of gravity manipulations. It is a powered glider, so when you get up to altitude, you can shut it off and the propeller will fold back and you can glide around. Less usage of the battery. Really wish the camera wasn't on it. That's how good it is. It's really bad. I'm sure some of you have had experience with those one-piece cheap deals. But the beauty of this little airplane is the fun of trying to fly it for an hour on a 1S battery. I've never done that. I've flown it for 20 or 30 minutes, and that's probably about 25 minutes of just playing gliding with the motor completely off, because if you just fly it constantly on the motor, this thing won't fly 5 minutes before it burns the battery down, especially pushing the camera and the video transmitter. But if you can get it out on actually a slightly windy day, not total windless, if you're good at flying and stuff, you can run it totally as a glider and maybe gain some altitude. It's so light, if it gets in an updraft, it's gone. Sometimes the updrafts are fun to try to get out of because you're trying to go straight down, but you're still going up with this bad boy. There's no telemetry, no GPS, no nothing in this. I think it does have a little stabilization. I'm not sure. I'll have to look that up again, but I'm not sure how that stabilization would work, as there is no ailerons, just rudder and elevator. But again, I'll have to review this one before I fly it again. But this will fly inside a school gymnasium. It's slow, it's fun, like saying a little wind. If you know what you're doing, you can actually gain altitude with it completely in glide mode. So it's good for training. Lets you really work on some of those skills. But I've had a lot of fun with this. It's little, it's cheap, I don't know, it's fun. Old Mr. Kent of oldmrkent.com, another drone pilot. He's 85. I'll watch his YouTube channel and listen to his stories. He gives out stories with his videos. I'll start doing some stories soon because I got some good ones. They're all coming up on my 50th anniversary in a month of my birthday. It's 18th. November the 22nd. The first day of boot camp for me 50 years ago. January will be graduation from boot camp and moving on to basic electronics training in Memlington, Tennessee, where I joined the flying club there. After about 10.5 months of electronics training there, I went to North Island, California for 3 months of electronics training. Went from there to my squadron in Norfolk, Virginia, where I got 3 more months of electronics training. And then I was attached to VAW 125 for the rest of my duty, and was a aviation electronics technician on the world's most complex electronics package. Back in the day, there was nothing on the planet more complex than the inside of our airplane. I had a lot of fun for about 3 years in that airplane. Anyway, I probably left some things out, added some things in, just didn't need to, but I'm going to call it a day and relax for a while. Thank you all so very much.